On this episode of Athletic Training Chat, we have Jack Marucci, who is the program director for LSU in their athletic training program. Amongst the many other things that Jack has on his plate, he also runs a baseball bat company, very successful at that. So Greg really gets into a lot of different things with Jack in this episode, basically around balance, working at one of the highest level institutions in terms of athletics and how that ties into being program director with his athletic training program, plus balancing work with everything else he has going on while running a company as well. So lots of great insight into this. Jack has done a lot, has a ton of good takeaways. So without further ado, we hope you enjoy this episode. And as always, we are powered by Mueller Sports Medicine. Please enjoy.
Welcome to this episode of Athletic Training Chat. We should have a great one for you today. We have Mr. Jacob Marucci. He is the program director at LSU. So I guess without further ado, I'll kind of let him take it away with an introduction here.
Yeah, I thought I always try to reach out. If someone, let me put it this way: if people reach out to me, I always try to help them. I think it's. Especially for the profession. And you can call me Jack. Jacob's on my email, I think. So,
Okay.
Yeah. And then the title is Director of Athletic Training. So, I mainly, when I first got here, I was at Florida State for 8 years, and we took over the program. And, it was working with all the different sports. We have 17 intercollegiate sports. And, so I brought a couple employees from Florida State over to LSU. They've been with me since then. Our staff has grown, so we've kind of had to split up the duties now because of the full expansion. Because with the master's program in athletic training, you're going to lose our master's program that we had existing, our GA program, which is really, it's kind of sad to see because we've had such great success. And we're going to lose our undergraduate program. So we had to expand our staff. So now we have we kind of have an individual I brought over from women's basketball that works primarily with me with football. And that's mainly my day-to-day duties, but we kind of split up the sports. So it's not as you get more hands-on with each employee that you have to supervise. But we're really hands-off department. We let our people do what they need to do. I think that's the important thing. Don't micromanage. I think when you hire somebody, I think there's some principles that we look for. I think one's the character of the individual, and they have a good heart. Do they work hard? That all kind of falls under that character piece. I think the next piece is the personality. Someone that can communicate, that has a positive personality, but knows how to talk to individuals. And the third is pretty simple: keep an open mind to change. I don't feel like we do the same thing we did 3 years ago in the athletic training field. So I think if you have those principles, that's in your core. Because I said, we always can teach you the rest of the stuff. It's not hard to learn how to, use modalities or the rehab. So I think those are really the principles of when we look at somebody and hire somebody. So, but like I said, we have a great staff. I think that's been, you're only as good as the people around you, because look, everybody has a different skill set. Some people are a lot better in maybe looking at policy. Some people are better in research. Some people are better in, just day-to-day activities. Some people are better dealing with, the coaches. So you want to create a team. That's what they call it, a team that people have different weaknesses and strengths. And I always say, focus on your strengths, identify your weakness. But I wouldn't put all the energy into that. Find out what you do well is what's going to carry you on. and don't be afraid to have enough, ability to bring in people that are better in some areas than you are. Don't have an ego. I always said ego makes you dumb, because you don't want to take any advice. You think you know it all. So that's a little snapshot of what we've done with the staff.
Yeah, no, that sounds fantastic. I mean, it's great to hear that you guys really focus on, those values and things. So
Yeah.
I guess I can tell that you're a very humble guy. So if you don't mind, I might kind of just speak of some of your experiences here, just because they kind of part into our questions. So Mr. Marucci here graduated from West Virginia, had a GA ship at Alabama. You were an assistant athletic trainer at Florida State for a while.
Right.
Had a couple kind of preseason NFL internships with the Buccaneers and Browns.
Right.
And you are in your 24th year at LSU?
Yeah, I don't even keep track. I don't even know. All I know, I got here in 96, so I guess the math will say 24. So.
Yep. And he has been a part of 4 national championship football teams, which is obviously, outstanding. 4 SEC championships. And we'll kind of get to this later on, but you started your own baseball bat company as well, which is extremely interesting, especially in a busy profession like athletic training to kind of to pile that on there. So I guess going from there, you've had all these great experiences. I mean, a lot of SEC experience, a little bit of, a dive into the pros. Do you feel like being flexible early on in your career really helped you decide which path you're going to take?
Yeah, I think flexibility, because you can set goals, I guess. I always felt like you have kind of where you want to be, but don't get so infatuated with the goal that you forget about, there's other avenues that you may have. And that's the thing you don't want to, let go. And what I mean by that, you may find a path that you're going and say, look, this interests me a lot. So you got to keep that open mind that maybe take you to a different. So that's where you have to be flexible. And also the flexibility is working with different groups of people too. You can't just, I was fortunate to have all those experiences at a young age. I mean, I went from probably within a 4-year period, I was with 4 different organizations based off internships: West Virginia, Cleveland, Tampa, and Alabama. And I guess you can throw Florida State in there. So I was exposed to a lot of different groups of people. So the flexibility better be there, or else you're not going to survive.
Sure. And then, how was it like getting all that experience at, a young age? Like you said, four places in 4 years. Was it kind of a lot to take in, or?
I think everybody's built differently. I think, we grew up in a Western Pennsylvania. We grew up in a coal mining town. So we were pretty blue collar. So, we grew up fine. I mean, it wasn't like but I think I just appreciated it so much to be at these places. I never took that for granted. That's one thing I never did. I always felt very fortunate. And I think a lot of people today, they get an opportunity and they kind of take it for granted. And I think that's where you can't, I think the view of the position is, and I'm still thankful I always tell people the privilege to work where I'm at now. You have to keep grounded about that. If it was Cleveland, I mean, I'll never forget, the internship back then. You had to write letters, and I grew up a Steelers fan, but I remember getting the letter from the Browns head trainer Bill Tessendorf and said we might have some possible openings, and I told him, I said, what about the interview process? And he goes, well, we're going through that now. And I told him, I said, I'll drive up there tomorrow. It's about a 3-hour drive. And he says, I tell you what, you got the job, just based off of that statement. And because I felt so fortunate just to have an opportunity, maybe he would talk to us. And sure enough, the opportunity came. So I think I was always very appreciative again of the opportunities.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Well said. Definitely, a lot of importance there, and it can weigh a ton on, you know, those options and things. So I guess transitioning into your current role here at LSU, what is it like being the director of athletic training?
Well, you know, it's again, it's you're only as good as the people around you, good as administration, and they've always been very supportive of us. So I think that's the first thing. Then, you know, you don't get somewhere unless you have people that you trust and have the same values. I mean, there's a value piece there, and if you don't have the same type of value, then I think that's where it can go awry. And you know, I think that's the important part. You know, we got here. I've been through, trying to think how many coaches. One, two, three, about 4 coaches. Jerry DiNardo was here when I got here, and he was a tough coach to work with, and I think it taught you better trust your staff, because that's who you have to confide in and work through. But one thing I never did, you know, you go to staff meetings, some coaches are tougher on you than others. Well, you know, I never would carry it on down to the train. They would never know. And I thought that was always something I didn't want them to have, you know, an effect from. But we were able to get through that. We had an interim head coach for our last game, and it was kind of neat because he called us in. He knew we had the pulse of the team. So we gave him some pretty highly, you know, critical recommendations. We ended up winning that game. I always told him he'll be the only undefeated coach. His name's Al Hunter in LSU history, so he's 1-0. Then Nick Saban came in. And then same type, you know, he was untrusting at first. Then he ended up leaning on us on a lot of stuff. We won our first SEC championship. It was one of the most incredible games. I'll never forget it. We had a backup because our starter got hurt, Matt Mock, who there's a story behind that. He wore jersey 18, and we talk about character all the time. So after he left, I love the kid. You know, he's a dentist now in Denver, but a Midwest kid from Indiana, and we kind of clicked a lot. He was a former baseball player. He came back and played for us when he was probably about 22. He was a freshman. And he actually was the one I would bring some bat. We'll talk about the bats, but I'd bring a bat in and say, hey, how's this look? And we talked, you know, baseball bats. But the 18 represents now, if you look it up in LSU, it's another thing we're pretty proud of. It goes to a player that has the highest character every year. Now it's handed down. It's in the college Hall of Fame now. So that number 18 is represented, basically organically it came from the training room. So I thought that was a pretty neat thing. But we won the SEC championship, but just with those type of guys. And, it was such a special time. So then the next coach was Les Miles, who was very good to us. You know, I enjoyed our kids grew up together. They played high school baseball together. That's great times, but I think got a little antiquated. And Orgeron, who I developed a very good relationship with, and he's probably been one of the best. He is the best head coach I've been with because he allows us to do a lot of research. He allows us to do a lot of creative stuff in the training room. I think the era of taping ankles and all that, is pretty much for us. It's kind of a wayside thing, but we have really, I think, been proud on the stuff that we've been able to do because it's applicable. So, but he allows us to grow. If it's eye tracking with our wide receivers, if it's looking at pass rush guys and the different stances on right side, left side. We've done a lot of research from sodium, looking at cramping. We looked at rhabdo. We have such a large menu of research projects. But again, the head coach allows you to expand on that and doesn't always guessing why we have all these people out here, observing. So the experience has been second to none. The 3 national championships here and the 1 at Florida State. They all were a little bit different. And, I think the last one reminded me that team was a lot from an offense like we had at Florida State with Charlie Ward, who actually won the Heisman also as a quarterback. And but this team is probably one of the greatest to go down. And I've done a lot of podcasts on character, and so Coach believes in it. So I looked at all these great championship teams, and I've taken character matrices out, and that's how we've recruited the last couple of years. And that's why this team was such a great experience, because we had a lot of input on it. And I told Coach at the beginning of the year, our recruiting class that we brought in, who's our leaders now, I think their character score was, since 2001, was probably the second highest. And I said, we're going to go a long way. So, but that's how the profession's changed. And we're trying to change it too, because, you know, it's okay to dabble in other things. You don't have to be just anatomy guy. But there's a lot of, you know, I think the role can really grow. So that's kind of where we're at now.
Wow. Some great stories there. I mean, I'm sure we could sit down for hours and talk about some of these past coaches and definitely some strong personalities and whatnot. So I guess you kind of touched base on this a little bit, but maybe approaching it from a little more of a sports medicine side. Right. What was that dynamic like with the national championship season that you guys just had?
Well, it was one that I always said I didn't want the year to end, because, again, I appreciate it. I knew what we had. It was just so good every week. And because the type of players we had from a high character, look, you know, you can look at all the different star ratings. A lot of our best players were 2 stars. One guy was a 0. One guy, Burrow, was a 3. So we had a lot of players that weren't this high moniker, but we were able to develop it, because you look at character and intelligence, because we do a lot of mental processing. We also are involved in how quick people see the game, how quick they can process, make decisions, how impulsive they are, how quick they can track an object. So we're all into a lot of those numbers, but they don't lie, as people would say. You know, I knew we had something going into the year. But we beat Texas on the road, which they gave us everything they had because they were healthy, and that was their Super Bowl. And you could see our offense on display. So we knew we had something. And, you know, you're working through the injuries, and Coach O goes, man, you guys are the best. I don't know how you guys get these guys back so fast. I said, I'm not that good. I said, we're not that good. I said, it's the type of player, better character guys will make you look better, because what they'll do, they'll want to come back for you. I said the next piece is that look at our stretch, the way we practice. The last 8 weeks, we cut back so much. I said it's the way we practice. It helps us, you know, it makes us, you know, we don't have as much exposure. So it allows us to do that. And I said we do use a lot of biologics. You know, we studied amniotic stem cells for the last 5 years. And they work. It's we use them for anti-inflammatory. We're not looking for growth factors. Then there's another product that you can take out of the plasma. It's called Alpha2 Macroglobulin. It's an A2M. Okay. It's another big-time anti-inflammatory. So it has allowed us to get guys back. You know, we've cut a lot of the cortisone out because of the amniotic, and the prices have come down. But we have a freezer right in the training room. But we've have over 100 some cases documented. I spoke at Dr. Andrews' clinics twice, the baseball one and the football one, and presented that. And I think that's stuff that we use this year. Again, fully, we probably went, because we have such a good feel about it, that was something we used to try to help kids get back safely and quicker. But, you know, every week that went by was very exciting, just because you know the type of work was put in. But again, you're dealing with a population that we really enjoyed being around. And I think that is why I knew it was such an important piece to enjoy and soak up every minute of that. And I think because we had a lot of input, we did studies in the summer looking at pass rush guys, looking biomechanically, are they better on the right side? Maybe they bend better on their left. You know, you look at the range of motion from their ankle, knee, and hip. Do they get around that corner quicker? Do they come out of a stance, maybe a 2.3 point? Who accelerates better from one side? So, and coach used it. And we did a lot this year. We do a lot. I got it from baseball, the way guys track a baseball. I look at the way they hit. So if a guy's a pull hitter, I learned it from my son, who was a very, very good hitter and played college baseball, who I ended up making the bats for. But he looked like he always had a quick bat he could pull, but he was a cross-dominant hitter, meaning he was right-handed, left-eye. And there's variances. We can get in that whole topic. But so I applied it to wide receivers. There's a preference the way these guys track a football. They're going to say, I don't know if you played football or not, but I guarantee if I throw a ball to you, you'll tell me probably I'd rather turn one way than the other to catch a ball. And we have a whole sequencing. We have a wearable now. I've worked with Mike Mann, who's been a great scientist with us. He's got his master's from University of Florida, so we've kind of partnered with him. But we try to put our receivers in the best routes possible to make them. Now, a lot of guys are bilateral route runners that there's a variance, but it's not going to affect them as much. Or we can change their technique. So why this year, again, was so special, we had a lot to do with using some different things that we studied, and our head coach uses it if it has validity to it. He's told us, he goes, "You've made me a better coach," and I make sure our staff hears that, or I bring them in the meeting to present stuff. So because it's everybody again, and so you finish it up. You go in those last 3 games. You play Georgia, Oklahoma, then Clemson. That was probably the healthiest we were all year. I mean, we had one kid with a hamstring injury going into Oklahoma. It's really all I had on the injury report. I mean, I'm telling you, I didn't have much. And we practiced in a means of, we didn't overkill. And here's the thing about a head coach, too. They can always be paranoid what everybody else is doing. They always want to say, oh, he's working. Between Oklahoma and Clemson, both of those teams in that, I'd say it was a 4-week span, practiced 10 more days than we did. So actually, we practiced 10 days less than the combination, because I think Oklahoma practiced about 7 more days than us, and Clemson did 3 more. Again, it shows you that you don't have to, worry about what somebody else is doing. So I think also we implemented, I had a big hand in our locker room. We created these pods, and I got the idea from first class airplane seats. And I think rest and recovery was another thing that we implemented, because they could take a nap in there. They'd have to go all the way back to their apartment. So it folds out into a bed, and they could watch video in there. And there's a lot of stuff online. And that's another thing we were really proud of. So I think it was again, I think it was a special year, not only type the character players we had, the intelligence, and the innovative stuff that we were trying to implement. So, again, it was the best. And one thing about our head coach also, he does everything right. He's not going to cheat to get a player. He will not do it. And I always felt like 3 years ago when this team was built, it was built 3 years ago based off of those premises. If we win, then we have a model of what to do. And it is awfully, it's the honest of God's truth. This is the way you do it, and you can stick by it. And, the result was probably, one of the greatest teams ever. Now, Joe Burrow was pretty dang good. We had all these other young guys. And at the combine, our mental processing, they do mental process. He's the same. We helped this company launch. It's called S2. They said by far we had the most intelligent / football intelligence, mental processing players in any other place. And I thought that was something we were really proud of too. So, and then we looked at the draft picks. I looked at all the draft. We had 11 that were drafted in the 3rd round and up, 11 of them. We're going to have about 20 kids start of camp that were on this team last year. We'll start in the NFL camp. But of the 11, their GPA was very high. Their mental processing scores were almost in the elite level, and their character score out of 4 was 3.7. And he presented that whole thing to the team to show them that this is why it matters. And, at the end of the season, we had a lot of new staff people. He made me lead a meeting. It was 3 hours long. It was about character. We went over every player and talked about their scores. So, but I think, again, that's why that year meant so much to us.
Wow. Yeah, some of that stuff is just excellent. Getting to hear about your guys' research and really how much of a role you guys can get to play, with Coach O and, those high caliber athletes. That's just, one of the best sports medicine things I've heard.
Yeah.
So, that's awesome. So I guess next question for you, being at a program like LSU, it's got this winning culture with multiple sports. Is there any pressure of any added pressure of working in the sports medicine there?
Not at all. If anything, there's no pressure because it's pretty simple. Getting a kid, you treat them like your son. And if depending on what type of parent you are, maybe some parents will throw their kid out there, but we always listen to the player. If they don't have confidence, we're never going to put them out there. But I think culturally, we've always had players that always wanted to play, so it makes it easy. So there's not much pressure. If anything, sometimes we've got to hold them back. I think that we've cultivated that over years, and I don't feel like the coach is not going to put pressure on you. He's going to do the right thing. And if you know what you're doing and you know that what's the right and wrong thing, it works out. And again, when you communicate with the athlete, you explain it, you go in detail. For example, if a kid has a meniscus injury, look, we're in crunch time, middle of the season, we can get him back in a couple of weeks. But if we can repair that meniscus, we're going to sew it. He's going to be out for the 4 months or whatever. So as long as you stick to that and you're truthful, you never have to make up anything. You're telling the same story because it's the right thing. Mm-hmm. And again, I think pressure is built within that individual. So I feel like with our staff, which we make it fun, we make it, challenging, but I think the type of players we have that get back quickly, that there isn't much of a pressure because we're treating them, like I said, like you would a family member. So I think as long as you keep that principle, that keeps the pressure away.
Wow, very cool. All right. So some great answers on the sports medicine side. I did want to kind of dive into your baseball bat company here. Right. So what inspired you to start that?
My son was probably 8 years old, and we watched baseball, and he wanted a wood bat. He goes, Dad, I'd like to get a wood bat and hit with it. He liked the colors of Bonds' bat. So I called all the companies, Louisville Slugger and Rawlings and Sam Bat and all the big companies. And at the time, they didn't make them small enough. So back to Matt Mock, I said, I'm thinking of making some. I took a woodshop class in 8th grade, and I actually just connected. I've been trying to search out this family. I had a teacher, Mr. Hess. He was a woodshop teacher. And again, from our area, it means a lot because that's kind of the area we're from. It's more blue collar, woodshop. You do all these hands-on type things that you don't. I always believe that's how teaching should be. I think we should evolve as a culture instead of just sitting in a class. Everything should be more hands-on, quicker, because you don't forget it. So I bought a cheap lathe from Harbor Freight. It was $88, and I started making. I made him a bat. I brought it into Matt. Oh, it's tapered here. I still have the first bats I made, and so I started getting pretty good at it. So my son used a wood bat until he was 12, and he could hit. He was really good. But meantime, as all my skills are coming back with the wood lathe, and I did connect with the family. That's where I was going with it. And about a couple days ago, and it meant a lot because I just wanted to thank. It's the daughter, and because he was an older gentleman at the time, And I just wanted to tell her the story and how much it meant. That class was the best class I ever took in my life.
Wow.
It was one of the most valuable. You can get a master's or whatever, but that was the most important class. So I got pretty good at it. There was a player named Eduardo Perez who does a lot of MLB baseball, and I always loved him. He has all the things that you love. He has the character, personality, and he's fun to be around, and you want to be around those people. And he was playing for the Cardinals. This was like 2003, 2004. I was going up for a trainers convention in St. Louis. We were catching up, and I was trying to get a couple tickets, and sure enough, he said, well, come up. He goes, I tell you what, bring me up a couple bats. I wasn't licensed, okay. I'm back in the house spinning these bats, chips going everywhere, and I take it up to him. And he meets me in front of the hotel. And while he's going to the ballpark, he said, I tell you what, come down to batting practice tomorrow. And I want to maybe meet some guys. So I see him the next day, and he loved it. He goes, I'm going to sneak this bat in the game because you're not licensed. And I said, oh, shoot. I said, Eddie, this thing may explode. I said, I just made this thing in my backyard. The only people that swung these bats is 7, 8, 9-year-olds, So sure enough, I meet him. He takes me down there, introduced me to Albert Pujols and Barry Larkin. They had high interest. So actually, Barry Larkin was the first one to sneak it in a game to get a hit. Albert used it a lot for batting practice, and Albert ended up being a partner with us down the road with our company. But so Eddie, I think it was the 4th or 5th inning, he sneaks it in the game. And sure enough, he grounded out, but it was probably one of the neatest experiences because, we made this bat a couple days ago in the backyard. So word of mouth took off, and there's a ton of stories. It'd be hours, just tell you the stories, how these bats got in the big leagues. And it is the number 1 bat used now in Major League Baseball. And it's kind of humbling just to think about how it all started. And, if my son didn't want a bat, and I always say it is a game of inches because all the bats were about an inch off, which is a big deal for a little kid. But if they made a bat, those companies that was an inch shorter, then I probably would have never done it. And so that 1 inch was a big, big deal. But, it's created a lot of jobs. It's created probably over 100 jobs. There's a lot of people involved. I mean, there's a lot of partners. So but it has my name on it. And, the tradition you'll always, I guess, carry on. And it's a neat legacy to have. And I always tell people, it was a good stress relief, too, to get away from Saban when he was coaching. So I always tell people to have another interest. It makes you better in your profession. So that way you're not just come by just the, athletic training or sports medicine, because you see things differently when you have other interests, I believe, and don't let it consume you. And so because, I even tell our players, our line in recruiting is, again, I like to talk things in threes because people can remember it. I said, there's guarantees in life. And this is our opening line to recruits. I said, we don't live forever. You're going to pay taxes and you don't play football forever. So you better find out, you better get a degree, and we'll help you with a job. That's one of the jobs programs that we enjoy having. And that's why I use this Corona time for these players to say, look, this is what retirement's like. So that's why it's important to get a degree. And it's a whole nother topic because I think the CTE is overblown. And, we were the school that had the sensors in the helmets because we take concussion serious. We were the ones that put in the data to get rid of two-a-days. We were one of the big 4 speakers that spoke on it and showed the data and showed the impacts of rotational, G-force, and the whole deal. So we take it very serious. We were one of the first schools to use the impact. We use C3 logic now. So my point is we take it serious, but I think what happens is when people don't have a passion and they're done, you do get depressed. You do get anxiety because now what do I do? So that's why it's so important to have a college degree, have a plan, have a life's work, as Chuck Noll used to tell his players. And I think that's important to have. So, but it all kind of, as you see, it's all encompassing in what the program's about. So
Yeah, absolutely. So what was it like kind of balancing your bat company with your, program director at LSU? That's,
Yeah, I think, again, good people allow you to do some stuff. The coaches have to have an understanding. But I think, when we transitioned to a bigger building and all that, that was the summers. I would leave, but I would do that at night. I would cut the bats at night. I would spend a lot of time. And I think that's where, you just have to be smart the way you can, cut up the day. You have how you're going to plan it. But then it evolves into technology, right? I mean, an iPhone, you can do almost everything you want on there. You can take text messages. You can take all the social media, communicate. You can take all the emails, obviously phone calls. So you could manage once it's running, and you have a CEO. And look, they built that whole deal. Also, that wasn't me. I mean, and you built the same thing. You built a team that you can trust, and like I said, they probably benefited more than I have today, a lot more. But I think with technology, you could do a lot. Communicate with players. I go to spring training. You spend the week, communicate, you work with all those guys, then they have your information if they need some changes. So I that makes it easy. I think that's, with technology, that's the strong suit, as we're doing right now. You can FaceTime, you can still, but you still, I think you need that personal touch. I think that's what was an advantage of the bat company. I wasn't a salesman. I was in the athletics, and I would tell again, I go back to character. I would tell the clubhouse guys, because I only had so much wood, is that give me your best character guys. That's who we'll make bats for. I don't care if they're the greatest player. And we've cut guys off if they didn't do the right thing. And they got mad, and we got into it with them. And one guy was a Hall of Famer. But I think it was the same principle, working with them, and they always remind me of that. They love it, So, but I'll even do it. I did it this past spring training. Talked about, if you have some young guys, we can do more if they have higher character. So they direct us towards those guys. So, but I think balancing it, again, good people, I think you can achieve a lot, and with technology. So,
Sure. Yeah, some great points there. I guess, great hearing about the baseball bat company, and a very unique path for an athletic trainer especially. But I would love to get into the AT Chat 5 questions with you. We ask these questions with all our guests, and, really looking forward to your answers. So first one here is, where do you see athletic training going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I hope it goes, not because we're doing it, I hope it goes to more or less what we're trying to achieve, from a research. And look, it's not the research. I never thought I'd do research. That was the last thing. I wasn't built that way. I'm not hands-on, but our research is all hands-on. It's applicable. It's called applied research, because we're going to use it. We can do these snapshots, and a lot of these are IRB approved. And I think that's what's neat about it. But we're able to use it in the field right away, and we think that has given us a big advantage also. But I think just looking at some analytics stuff, and analytics, again, is not something that you think that it's all this number crunching, but let's look at the character scores. Let's look at the mental processing scores. See if we see trends. That's my big thing. Let's find trends on things. We did a rhabdo study where if someone has a problem with heat, they take them to the hospital, their CPK, and all that, their numbers are up. But maybe that's a normal occurrence. So sure enough, we took 25 players, moderate day, all their numbers are way up. So your numbers always go up. So that doesn't mean you have rhabdo. So we followed within the next 24, 48 hours, they all go back down. So I think that's the thing. Here's another neat thing on a spleen with mono. We had a big tight end, 6'5", and all the data shows everyone has a spleen. They're going to do you do an ultrasound and they look at it, how many millimeters. I said, maybe, I looked everywhere. There was one small study that showed that maybe larger people have a larger spleen, maybe a little common sense there. So we scanned him again, and it looked like one coming down, but he was feeling fine. I said, well, what we're going to do, we're going to wait about 6-7 months. Maybe maybe he has a larger spleen than this number that they give you. Sure enough, it was. So that's just a common sense thing. The other thing we did with like concussions, you know how you do the questionnaires when symptoms checklist. So we said, all right, after practice, let's do a symptoms checklist with people that feel completely fine after practice, didn't get hit. Sure enough, the average was 10. Some of them have headache, just from the heat, or wasn't they ever got hit in the head. These are walkthroughs and type of stuff. But they have a symptom score. So you already start with 10 points. So I think, again, those are common sense things. So I think athletic training has to expand and get away from, just we'll still have the core. I mean, we probably only, like ankle taping is a good example. We maybe tape 30% of the team. I mean, when we remodeled the building, I shrunk all that back down. I just believe that, we have to look at more things that we can do to expand. We don't have to stay in that little box, So, I mean, we have so many experiences, might as well capitalize on them. So.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all great stuff.
Yeah, and I think the stem cells and all that other biologics is another thing we really expanded on and it's made a huge impact. So, yep.
Yeah. All right. So what advice would you give yourself as a young athletic trainer?
I think the same thing as we talked about. You better keep an open mind, because if you get pigeonholed or get locked in just to one thing, like some people just get caught up in just biomechanics. And I remember as a young person thinking, man, I don't know enough about it. Maybe I'm losing something here. But you learn over time that it's good to have that knowledge base, but that's not everything. I think young athletic trainers hear a topic or something, and then they get, I don't know, they feel like they have to put almost too much effort into it. And it's worth it, but it's not really part of the big picture. It's like, all right, your back's out, you aligning the hips. We look at the, iliac crest, you've done all that. But if you look at the studies over next day or two, they go back to where they were. So you can do all that, and that's fine, but you better find some other means, to put the energy, is what I'm saying. So I would say, as a young athlete trainer, what I would have done, I wouldn't have got as caught up in those, just focusing on one thing that someone was really good at. But if someone is really good at that, bring them on your staff if that's what they enjoy. And that's part of the puzzle. That doesn't mean that's everything. And I think we can get educated. We think we can hear a speaker and it sounds like it's everything is coming out of this one area. So I think that's the biggest part of it. And also, don't have, it's fine to set goals, but, I think you got to broaden those because you just don't know what's going to change. We say in research too, that it's like a tree. You always find another thing to grow off of it. We research something else, but your career path is the same way. So don't get so caught up. I got to be here at this certain time. It's terrible to set numbers. And what I mean by that, I tell this with our players. Oh, I have to have so many sacks by the third game. I have to have so many interceptions. Once you start doing that, you're putting pressure on yourself. If you do the right things, you do what it'll happen. So I think that's the biggest part to understand.
Sure. Yeah, some great comments there. Next one for you. What has been the most influential resource that you've found so far in your career?
A lot of it's common sense. And I know that sounds simple. I think that's a huge resource of just remember what common sense means. And some people maybe have to go back and look at that definition. The other big resource is people that in you can go to all these meetings, but I think it's better to have the personal groups that you can talk about what they experienced. I think that's more important than just sitting there in a lecture in a PowerPoint. I think that is a resource, is using your colleagues to the fullest and talk to them and find out what they've seen success with. It's like a product, right? Someone comes, a salesman gives it to you. I'm going to automatically ask who else is using it. Then I'm going to ask them. That's the resources that you use to find out about products if they've already tried and true. So I think that's one of the most important things. So use your common sense, use your colleagues. I think those are very powerful tools.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Our next one for you is, if you could change or eliminate one thing in the field of athletic training, what would it be? A lot of common answers we get are dealing with a modality, maybe a common practice that people use, even just a mindset, really anything.
I think it's more a mindset. Again, we've talked about it during this interview. I think people have to change their mindset or thinking that athlete trainers can expand their roles. Now you can be limited by the coach. We know that, but you have to prove what you're saying. It has to have data-driven numbers. So, which isn't as hard as you think it is. I think the mindset from research, which I hate, I always would think, man, why would you ever do that? But I think we changed the mindset on the type of research we're doing. It's applicable. It's fun to do, and the players love it. And I think we're very rare because our players are involved in it. I think we're one of the only universities that we have like direct access, because we've teamed up our sports science groups. I have a fellow that we have on site in the training room, but we're tied in with kinesiology. So we have a whole group, immunologists. And so we have a really neat, fun group. But I think that's the other part. I think the mindset there is just so siloed that, we should let other people in, and they have great ideas. But, I think that's the biggest thing, that you see. I think that has to change. And, you mentioned modalities. We use modalities, but we're more functional movements. And, we've been like that for a long time, way before. I mean, you think about even dry needling, we've probably done it over 10, 12 years, at least 12 years. All that grass and ASTM, that was late 90s. I mean, so we've been very fortunate. The HIVA-MAT, we were the first, if people know that modality, that came from a small town in Louisiana. We're the first ones that kind of launched that. Again, you can see that we have an open mind where it's willing to try it. If it's safe to the athlete, let's try it. But you don't know what you're going to be able to find. So,
yeah, no, sounds, definitely agree. Sounds like some very cool stuff, especially with a lot of your cutting edge, applicable research that you guys are doing. That's just awesome to hear about, and it's definitely unique. We don't get a whole lot of that on our podcast here. So,
right.
Yeah, definitely appreciate that. So, last one for you here. What does being an athletic trainer mean to you?
Well, it means relationships. I think that's the most important thing that you'll ever have in your life. So we have a platform to create a relationship with a diverse group of people. And, I still talk to guys. You go back to Florida State days, Ward Dunn or Derek Brooks or Charlie Ward, who were all high character guys that we won with that team. But my point is, you're going to keep a relationship with people that, you create a bond with from a team. We all talk about, a lot of trainers, it is enjoyment to see a player get back out after and that's fun, and it's rewarding. So one interesting thing I should have shared with you in the national championship game, we had a player have a hamstring injury going into Oklahoma. The running backs coach is pretty upset. We have two freshmen behind him, but we had We had a third guy who was a 14 guy. He was here a year before. But he's thinking, how am I going to play these freshmen? What am I going to do if this happens? And he's asking our opinion, so we gave it to him. We said, what about Chris Curry? Chris Curry's a guy that's the first guy in the meetings. Chris Curry treats our people right. And I look at how people treat each other. That's part of the character matrix. And I said, he has a high character, plus he'll run with a vengeance because he has something to prove. This guy's a 14 guy, but he hadn't complained. We entitled these other players because they were 5-star guys and put them in front of him. He goes, go talk to the head coach. He had me go talk. And sure enough, here's an athlete trainer. You don't want to talk personnel, but I did and talked to them. So they liked the idea. So Chris Curry, and then he asked Burrow, he felt comfortable with him. Sure enough, Chris Curry almost had 100 yards that game. Chris Curry at halftime thanks us, almost in tears. And again, that's part of that relationship. That's what athletic training is. And that probably was more rewarding than anything we've done in a long, long time. The other thing is we had a running back that was dropping a lot of balls, and coaches are all over him. He was a young kid. He was on our team. And I noticed it was with his right head turn is where he was having problems. So we put the eyewear on it. We could see where his one eye was not firing correctly. It wasn't in sequence. It was rolling back. He kind of had a lazy eye there. He wasn't seeing the ball. So no wonder. So we did do a surgery, and it corrected it. We went back, tested him, and it was probably, again, one of the biggest impacts that we had on that individual. And I think that now the kid's so thankful. You just developed a strong relationship with them. And I think, again, that's all the rings and all that's fine, but it's always about who you have around you and develop that relationship. So I think those are just small snippets of that's within last year, but they were probably one of the biggest impacts that we've had. I'd say in athletic training, we're probably doing the most exciting things and most rewarding things in the last couple of years and in our career. So I think that's what people have to understand. And one other piece with relationships. So Brett Favre came in, and he was at my office, and we were just talking, and we were talking about what were the same type of topic. And he goes, why I couldn't give up football? Well, why I kept coming back? And you're probably a Packers fan.
Absolutely, yeah. Yep.
Okay. So he goes, the touchdown passes, all that were great. Because I didn't like camp. Because you know what I missed? I couldn't let it go. Was being in the training room and interacting with the guys, being in the locker room, being around a team. He goes, but that's a relationship. Mm-hmm. And that's why, he goes, it was so hard to give up. And so, that's what the profession should be. We're going to help a lot of people. We're always going to try to problem solve. But I think you got to stick to that. And then, I think that'll give you the most enjoyment. And, helping others is always the secret to life. If you can help somebody, you'll get more rewarding. And we teach this to our players. I always tell them, you're going to make some money. Help the person that you grew up with down the street that needed something. I don't care if it's a bed, a microwave. It'll be one of the greatest rewards you have. So I think that's, again, all-encompassing in what you try to do.
Sure.
Yep.
Well, we at Athletic Training Chat here really want to thank you for taking your time out to join us. I can already tell you that our viewers are going to really appreciate a lot of the advice and a lot of the really powerful statements and just the great stories. You got a lot of good ones about some high profile athletes. So everybody loves hearing those.
Right.
But yeah, we really just wanted to say we appreciate the time.